Since returning from a holiday in Cuba recently, I've naturally been asked the question, how was it? Cuba is not your average run-of-the-mill holiday destination, so I've had to think about my response. An experience? It's a time warp. I was out of my comfort zone. Blisteringly hot have been some of my responses. And of course, Tim Vine's old one-liner, it was a holiday of a lifetime. Never again. It was certainly great to spend 10 days with my son Simon, who's currently working in South America. He was keen to experience authentic Cuba and rough it a little, and his 50-something dad was happy to come on board. When I think of Cuba, my first thought is communism, and it was the first communist country that I had ever visited. There were times when I thought I was back in the 1970s, with all the images and sculptures of Che Guevara to be seen everywhere you went. The revolution is still very much alive in 21st century Cuba, and the museums testify to this. Havana has a very rich and diverse historical heritage. It's also quirky to see so many 1950s American cars on the roads, everywhere you go. It's like being on a film set. Back to the Future comes to mind. Seeing these beautifully cherished and preserved Cadillacs certainly made me feel better about my old turn of the century Honda Accord that I still drive. Cuba is undergoing change for sure. There are some amazing colonial buildings lining the streets and boulevards, all in various states of repair. There's a lot of building work going on, and the old Spanish colonial houses are being renovated. They make for an amazing facade and backdrop. Again, all part of your film set, but real. The iron grip of communist rule is easing in Cuba, with private enterprise now beginning to coexist alongside state ownership of the means of production. Cubans can now rent out some of their rooms to tourists, and they are not unlike our B&Bs. 3 that we stayed in had some amazing views, but strangely, very little or no natural light in the bedrooms. Some entrepreneurial Cubans also run restaurants in their front living rooms or on a whole floor of an apartment block. This one we went to afforded a fascinating view of New Havana. Cuba is historically renowned for many things, and music is clearly one of them. Everywhere you go, particularly in restaurants, there will be artists producing that distinctive Cuban sound. One evening, we went to an amazing colonial building, and upstairs we were treated to an evening of the Buena Vista Club-esque beat. The following evenings, we went to 2 of the top jazz venues in Havana, and we were not disappointed. Everyone knows that Cuba produces the best cigars in the world, and a trip to Cuba is incomplete without that mandatory visit to a cigar factory. We took a 3-hour coach trip westwards and stayed a couple of nights in Vinales, a lovely contrast to Havana. It was fascinating to see how the leaves are rolled into a perfect cigar. We had a guide to ourselves for the day, met up with some local farmers and went into the mountains. Three hours on the back of a horse. Transport in an ox-drawn cart. You've got to live. We purposely avoided the tourist beaches of Veradero and opted instead for the locals' resort of Havana Guanabo. It was primitive. We were often the only Europeans on the beach. It was totally non-commercialised other than a newly opened restaurant. And that was on the front. Probably our only creature comfort of the holiday. We were popular there. Well, my son was. If you're thinking about holiday in Cuba, my advice is to book sooner rather than later, and before McDonald's and Starbucks set up shop. That is, of course, if you want a holiday with a difference and experience authentic Cuba.